Hello, I'm Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. I'm pleased to be here today, joined by some of my favorite and most outstanding colleagues in law enforcement, including the head of my organized crime task force, Perry Kadanoff, and New York's great police superintendent, Joseph D'Amico. Before we start on the issue of Operation Ghostbusters, I do want to say something very briefly about the Supreme Court's decision. I am pleased and proud to join millions of advocates all across America in applauding the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court upholding the right of same-sex couples to marry in every state in the Union. This is a decision deeply rooted in the American principle of equal protection of the laws. It is as significant a decision in my mind as Brown v. Board of Education or Baker v. Carr. It is a game changer, and it is another great example in the American tradition of moving us ever closer to our national ideals of equal justice under law. And we are here to do justice in another context today. We are announcing our latest effort in an ongoing effort by my office in collaboration with the state police and other colleagues in law enforcement to do whatever we can do to deal with the plague of illegal guns. We know we have a serious problem of gun violence in this country. On an average day, it is estimated that our nation's communities suffer 86 gun-related deaths. We witnessed 9 of those deaths last week in Charleston, South Carolina. Over the past year, we have mourned the loss of too many children, too many brothers and sisters, too many parents, and too many of our heroic law enforcement officers here in New York and across the country. As New York's chief law enforcement officer, I have a responsibility to do everything in my power to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. The overwhelming majority of gun owners in New York and across America are law-abiding citizens. They are supportive of our efforts to keep guns out of the hands of criminals. But in New York, I think I can speak for gun owners and folks who don't own guns alike. We have a zero-tolerance policy for guns getting into the hands of criminals. We're here today because of a massive loophole in the scheme of regulation and law to protect us from illegal guns. Criminals are able to get their hands on guns that are untraceable and have no serial numbers or other identifying markers. They're called ghost guns because of our inability to trace them. They are the next frontier of illegal firearm trafficking. So yesterday, as a part of our Operation Ghostbusters, investigators from my organized crime task force and the New York State Police arrested 3 defendants for allegedly fabricating and selling a dozen of these ghost guns. And you can see the guns here on display. These were seized, and these were manufactured from parts that were acquired, purchased. None of them had a serial number, none of them required registration, and they were assembled within people's homes. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time that a state law enforcement agency has arrested any defendant for the charges of selling ghost guns. These are extraordinarily dangerous weapons, and we allege that 2 of the defendants, Antonio Jimenaitis and Thomas Weber, met in prison, and while they were in doing time on unrelated charges, developed a scheme to sell ghost guns to known gun traffickers. Based on our investigation, we allege that their scheme operated in a clear and intentional effort to skirt our nation's gun laws. Unscrupulous manufacturers are selling unfinished gun parts and kits that can easily be transformed into fully functional assault weapons. The critical part of a firearm is what's called the lower receiver. This is where the trigger goes, this is where the shell goes, and this includes the essential parts of a gun, and it is so critical a part of a firearm that it is regulated in and of itself as a firearm. A fully milled lower receiver is a firearm, It requires a serial number under federal law, and purchasers of fully milled lower receivers are subject to a background check. The challenge that we are trying to address today, and that we will be working with our colleagues in government to address in the future, is that these defendants, as we allege in our complaint, sought out several companies that quite openly sell unfinished receivers that don't have the holes drilled into them that make them functional. The sale of these receivers exploits a loophole that we believe could be very, very significant. We don't know how many of these guns are out there, but based on this particular investigation, we suspect there's a very, very large number. With less than an hour of work, an unfinished receiver can be transformed into a fully functional lower receiver and be used to build an untraceable and highly lethal firearm like the AR-15s and AR-10s we have here today. These are untraceable. That's why they're called ghost guns. And these are assault weapons, ladies and gentlemen. These are not used for hunting. These are not used for self-protection. As we allege in our criminal complaint, this past April, while Defendant Himanitis was still in Nassau County Jail on unrelated charges, he made several recorded phone calls to the third defendant, his wife, Diana Collins, asking her to purchase easy jigs, which are the tools that are used to mill the lower receivers and make them into functional weapons. These conversations were recorded, and we have alleged that the very day Himanitis was released from jail in early May, he started fabricating and selling ghost guns using the equipment his wife had purchased for him while he was incarcerated. And he was manufacturing these weapons in his home on Long Island. Himanitis allegedly used a fake military ID. He forged documents indicating that he was an Army Ranger with extensive experience with firearms, that he was dishonorably discharged. He even sent in forged documents to obtain Purple Hearts so he could build this false identity and impress people with his expertise. In fact, he was not ever in the Army, and this was all a part of his scheme to hold himself out as an expert on firearms, manufacture these untraceable illegal weapons, and sell them. He allegedly sold 7 fully functional assault rifles to undercover investigators 2 weeks after he got out of jail. And the conversations with his wife involved ensuring that she would obtain what he needed to manufacture the guns. A month after that, he sold 5 more of these ghost guns to investigators. The guns were sold for more than $3,000. This is far above the market price for a regular assault rifle, which confirms the most important fact about this problem, about the problem of ghost guns. No one who can purchase a weapon for far lower price legitimately in a gun store or at a gun show would pay this premium. The people who are willing to pay this premium are people who cannot purchase weapons legally. They are people who are seeking to evade the law. We've reviewed UPS records and determined, and we allege in our complaint, that Himanitis and Collins received 19 separate deliveries of gun parts from manufacturers and distributors across the country during the last 2 months. We believed that they ordered the parts, in most cases, online. And some of the websites that they used make it incredibly easy for criminals to make these deadly weapons. In one of their recorded phone calls, Collins read Himanitis a direct quote from the website of one of the manufacturers they used to sell their patented Easy Jig. These are the tools that you can see right here that are used to make this into a functional lower receiver. And this company stated, the Easy Jig, quote, makes finishing your lower a monkey simple process. We are charging Weber, Himanitis, and Collins with criminal sale of a firearm in the 1st degree, criminal sale of a firearm in the 3rd degree, and conspiracy in the 4th degree. We're also charging Himanitis and Collins with endangering the welfare of a child because there was a young child in their home when they were allegedly manufacturing these weapons. If convicted, these 3 defendants could face up to 25 years in prison. Ghost guns are the next frontier of firearms trafficking. They are the clearest path for criminals and people with mental health problems or who are otherwise rendered ineligible to purchase firearms through legitimate channels. And the allegations in our complaint show just how easy it is for criminals to make these completely untraceable military-grade firearms. We are not afraid in the state of New York to take on gun violence. Certainly since I've been Attorney General, we have made this a top priority. We've worked with New York's gun owners and gun show operators to create an innovative national model, which I believe is the best system in the United States for ensuring that there's a background check for anyone who purchases a firearm or a weapon at a New York gun show. We work together with the gun show operators and the people who are the good, legitimate gun owners and gun dealers who want to keep people safe. We have organized gun buybacks across the state, taken hundreds of weapons off the street. We've gone after gun trafficking rings. This is something we will continue to do, but it's important to know that this is dangerous work, and it wouldn't be possible without our state's courageous law enforcement officers. In particular, I want to thank the brave undercover investigators who risked their lives to carry out this important mission, and were so on their game that they were able to meet with Himanitis the day he got out of prison and started on his scheme to manufacture and sell these deadly weapons. And with that, I'd like to introduce one of my really greatest colleagues in law enforcement, someone who works every day to keep New York safer, and who has been instrumental in reducing the prevalence of illegal guns in the state of New York, Superintendent Joe D'Amico.
Thank you, General. Good morning. I'm honored to be here with Attorney General Schneiderman and his team to announce another great investigation, another great case, and these significant arrests. Make no mistake, we're not talking about sportsmen here. We're talking about dangerous felons who are selling these weapons. We're talking about two individuals who were serving time in prison on previous felony convictions. Himanitis, who was in on a gun charge, had previous gun charges. Weber, who was doing time for a robbery charge, and had an extensive rap sheet. So we're talking about bad individuals. These individuals sold these guns to an undercover trooper who portrayed himself to be a drug dealer. Told him these guns were going to Mexico, Dominican Republic, and Colombia. At no time was there any concern to where these guns were going, how are they going to be used, who are they going to affect. It was all about greed. That's what it comes down to. These weapons are very powerful, capable of firing a large amount of ammunition very quickly and very accurately. That's why they're the weapon of choice for military and law enforcement all across the country. We use them because, well, you know, these guns were not meant for hunting. These guns were meant to hunt people. That's what they were meant for. And basically, the rounds that are in these guns travel at a very high speed, over a very long distance, and can penetrate multiple surfaces, including the body armor that's worn by law enforcement. So we consider them very dangerous. We've seen the carnage that these things could cause in places like Sandy Hook and Aurora, and these mass shooting incidents around the country when they fall into the wrong hands. So we're very concerned about that. In 2013, the state gun laws were changed, and these weapons configured the way they are with the characteristics that they have would be illegal under the gun laws of New York State. Also, those gun laws were changed to keep guns out of the hands of the very people who sold them to us, convicted felons. So, you know, we're vigorously working with the Attorney General and our law enforcement partner to root out guns like this. As you saw, the Attorney General held up the lower receiver. I mean, there's no doubt there's only one function for this thing. It was sold by companies who took advantage of a loophole that really needs to be closed. You know, this thing makes a firearm. This should have a serial number, and it should require a federal background check to be able to buy this thing, the same as any other gun. So I hope our legislators hear that message. Again, we didn't know where these guns were going, how they were going to be used, and I only think that by making these arrests and seizing these guns, we probably saved lives today. So just a couple of thank yous. I want to thank Deputy Attorney General Perry Kadenoff and Deputy Chief Chris Vasta of the Organized Crime Task Force. In my tenure as superintendent, we've done so many great cases with our partners in OCTF involving guns, gangs, and drugs in corners of the state, every corner of the state. Seizing guns and drugs headed for our communities and taking out gangs who are wreaking havoc on our residents through crime and violence. So great partners. I want to thank Attorney General Schneiderman, as always, a great leader, a great supporter of law enforcement, a great partner. And I'd really be remiss if I didn't take a second to thank the men and women of the New York State Police, particularly the Troop L gun unit on Long Island, under the command of Captain Jim Dewar and Senior Investigator Joe DiMaria, and a fantastic undercover officer who worked on this case. So I thank them for risking their lives every day to do the job and to make us safer. So thank you, Attorney General.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as the superintendent noted, ladies and gentlemen, there is no other function for this piece of equipment. You can't make a planter out of it. It's not something that's used for decorative purposes. The purpose is to make a firearm. And yet it is sold, and the federal government does not regulate it. It regulates a firearm. There's no requirement for a serial number. This is something that must change. So while we await for legislation in either Washington or Albany, we are committed with our partners in law enforcement to doing everything we can do to call attention to this problem. We encourage anyone who has any knowledge of other activities relating to ghost guns to contact law enforcement. The people who want these guns are the people who cannot buy guns at legitimate gun stores or gun shows because they have criminal backgrounds or other disqualifying factors. This is something that we need everyone's help to end, and with that, we can take some on-topic questions. If you'll tell Matt who you are.
How much is the real price in the legal market of those arms?
The real price of these guns? Well, the real price varies, but it's a small. We can get you the numbers, but the numbers vary from place to place. But there's certainly a very small portion of the $3,000 that they were charging for them.
Was there any concern that any of the guns that he made were not purchased by investigators that actually went unregistered?
This is an ongoing matter. We're looking at everything that they did and who they were in contact with. One of the reasons we moved very quickly in this case, Amanitis only got out of jail on early May, was that there was a child in the home, and we were concerned about the safety of the child. But this is an ongoing investigation.
Other topics?
Good to see you. Superintendent has another engagement.
You were very outspoken for calling for now that the package in Albany is complete, what they usually call the big ugly, is complete. The rent laws, especially with the rent laws, are going to be like for the next 4 years. You were very outspoken about the need to end vacancy decontrol. That's not going to happen. You also said on Tuesday that the governor had tremendous leverage in this situation. So I wanted to get your take on this package that we have now, and also get you a sense of. You said other topics.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Oops.
All right.
Okay.
No, I'd like to get your take on this package first, and I'd also like to say if you feel like the governor used his leverage sufficiently in this case.
I have not had a chance to review the entire package. I do think that it is. I'm disappointed that all of the issues that had to be dealt with were not dealt with. We've got sunset provisions at varying times. It's clear that the legislature and the governor will have to get back to work very soon to deal with these issues. I also am disappointed and frankly find it incomprehensible that there were not further measures taken to reform the procedures in our state government and in our campaigns. There were no reform provisions to get money out of government or politics as a part of this package, and I think that certainly should be on the table when they return for what I anticipate will be a special session in the near future.
But did the governor use his leverage that he had of efficiently in trying to...
I haven't reviewed the whole package. I don't want to comment on that right now.
Chris?
Hank Greenberg had a pretty significant victory against the federal government in the AIG case. There's been a lawsuit by the Attorney General's office going for 10 years plus. The Court of Appeals last week said it was going to take up the case again. Just wondering what you thought about that, and if you have anything on Judge Mueller's opinion.
No, I'm not going to comment on that. I think our case proceeds forward. It's been up and down in the appellate courts for many, many years. I'm the third Attorney General of New York State to be involved in this matter. I certainly hope that it will be concluded on my watch.
Thank you.
Okay.
About receivers.
Yes.
Can they sell them at gun shows like that? If I walk in a gun show, would you see something like that? Can you assess that, or you have to go online and find?
No, it's important to understand that this is a specialty product. This is not something that you will find legitimate gun manufacturers producing. It's not like you can get one from Smith & Wesson. These are only sold because they are a piece of metal that slips through a loophole in federal law, and this is not something that legitimate sportsmen, legitimate gun show operators, gun show stores have to have federal firearm licenses. The products that they sell are restricted, and they have to do background checks. This is not a product you'll find in a regular gun store. This is something that is sold to the specialty market for manufacturing ghost guns. The only reason to purchase this product is to evade the laws that gun show operators and gun store operators all across New York enforce. And I go to gun shows and visit with these people, and they enthusiastically enforce these laws. They're people who are the men and women of New York who are sports enthusiasts, who are gun enthusiasts, who go to gun shows. They all support background checks to ensure that criminals and people with mental health problems do not get guns. This is a rogue industry seeking to evade those laws.
Last one.
Just wondering if your office is involved at all in investigating the Peacock scandal, and whether you plan to probe any banks related to those allegations.
The
FIFA scandal,
football?
yeah.
No, we're not involved. We're not involved in that particular scandal, but we watch it with great interest. Thank you.